What's up, everybody? We're here in Asbury Park at Electric Tattooing. Mike Schweigert.
What's up, brother? Good to see you.
You are somebody I've been wanting to interview for quite some time. I respect you a lot, not only as a tattoo artist, but for your history. I think that there's a lot of times where I might have a question about some history stuff that have actually reached out to you and a couple other people. And I always appreciated that. You know, we had talked about doing this very early stages of the channel.
I remember when we first met.
We said today that, you know, I'm glad I didn't do it because things are much better now than they were back then. So I'm excited to be here today. I want to give some people that might not know who you are, your background. I know you've been interviewed a bunch of times, you know, whether it was with Eric Perfect or different podcasts. You've even done some stuff for Vice.
Well, yeah.
You know, let's give them your background. You're not a Jersey boy, but you grew up in Jersey.
Yeah, I was born in Phoenix, Arizona.
Okay.
But I'm 55 now. I've been here since I was 2. I really consider myself to be
pretty much a Jersey boy.
Yeah.
You know, growing up Point Pleasant?
Yeah.
Yeah. You were into like BMX skate kind of stuff. You know, typical teenager.
Yeah.
Getting into like punk and I don't say typical, but typical for tattoo people.
Yeah, for my generation anyway. Yeah,
it
was kind of a new kind of the whole punk rock tattoo thing was, you know, combination skateboard tattooers.
Right.
Were kind of my generation from what I know anyway. I'm sure there was some earlier from 70s.
You went to college down south, right?
I went to Savannah College of Art and Design.
Well, now, when you went there, what were you going to school for?
What I thought I wanted to do was graphic design.
Okay.
But I had a misconception of what graphic design was. Like, I kind of pictured it more of like an illustration job that you would like, say for like doing record covers, skateboard graphics, more illustrative artwork for commercial purposes.
Okay.
Not so much like logos and what graphic design more really is, you know.
And then while you were going to school there, you got your first tattoo?
Yeah, well, actually it was like before I even started taking my classes.
Okay.
I got SCAD, in Savannah, and our dorms weren't ready. So we had to go stay at a hotel for a day or two before they had to lay in the carpets or some shit. I don't really remember exactly. But the first thing I did was look up where the tattoo shops were in town, and there was one. It was on 117 Whitaker Street, which butted up to an alley. If you walked down the alley to the other end was where my dorms were on Barnard.
Okay.
So I literally was like down the alley. So, I mean, my parents unpacked me, said our goodbyes, and I was down that alley to go try to get going. I got tattooed right away. I mean, if my mom forgot her purse or something and came back, I would have been caught in the chair.
Now, was that something you had on your mind on the way down?
I had it in my mind even when I was younger up here.
Okay.
I grew up in this area, so like there was Tony the Pirates, there was G Bernardo shop.
Yeah.
I wanted to get tattooed, but I just I didn't really have the excess money. A lot of places were checking IDs.
Okay.
Some place like Tony the Pirate, he wasn't going to check. I couldn't get there, And in hindsight, I'm really glad I didn't.
Yeah.
Because I would have gotten some dumb...
Could have got a $20 tattoo, though.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I got $20 tattoos from Tony's, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have gotten something, I wanted to my first band's logo, something I drew, like something I probably wouldn't have... I wouldn't have wanted by the time I was 18,
Okay. You wound up actually apprenticing for the guy that did it?
Yeah. I was getting my first tattoo, and he knew I was, I think he just perceived I was an art student, because I wasn't military. Like the town had like a certain, demographic. There was like military.
Right.
I wasn't from Savannah. You could tell that, right? He just put it together that I was a SCAD student,
Okay.
And at that time was 88, so that's when people were starting to really kind of walk in and I want that one, which 9 times out of 10 they did, but he needed somebody to kind of draw things for him.
Okay.
He was one of those he could do his flash wonderfully,
right?
But he could not.
Somebody wanted something alternative of that.
Yeah, he wasn't going to be able to draw it.
And who was the guy?
His name was Jack Witt, California Jack Witt.
Okay.
His shop was California Tattoo.
Shop closed now?
No, shop's still there.
Still there?
It's not in the same location, but it's still in Savannah.
And is it still California?
It's still California Tattoo. He's retired and completely out of the shop. Honestly, I don't even know who's running the shop at this point. Last time I was there was 2016, I think it was, for the 40th anniversary of the shop. Last time I've seen him. Like I said, I don't even know exactly where the shop is in town anymore. But okay. It's still there. It's still California Tattoo.
You came up here for vacation or?
I came up here the end of school year, I failed first year. It's like basically that not to go too deep my like lack of college education, but it was if you missed 4 classes, you know, 4 of a class, you failed. And basically, if I had a class, the shop was open from 5 to 10 every weekday.
You were going.
I was going.
Right.
You know, so I basically failed school. And I honestly, when I took the apprenticeship, I really wasn't even thinking that I wanted to tattoo. I just liked being in a tattoo shop. I liked, you know, the whole, like soaking it all in. And he was teaching me stuff. I was learning how to make needles, mix pigments, you know, doing all, like, we would actually work from acetate. So I would like have dry piece of paper, slap the acetate down, trace over it, you know, and like shade it with the pen, you know, like kind of tattoo paper, you know,
right.
but with pencil and so forth. Just being like, well, I'm just going to learn this. I don't know what I want to do. And then one day I wanted to get a tattoo, and he said, "You do it on your leg." And I actually wanted to get it on my chest. He was like, I was like, "No." He's like, "Do it on your leg." I'm like, "No, I want it on my chest." And finally he was like, "No, you do it on your leg." And I was like, you know, oh shit, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, as soon as I started doing it, I was like, holy shit, this is it. I mean, I botched the hell out of the tattoo, but I was just like, I love this. This is like, I know this is what I want to do, you know? So it's kind of like, you know, luckily it was pretty quick into my apprenticeship that I was like, I knew it was what I wanted to do, not just.
And then you came back up here?
After school was over. I actually tried, my mom had moved to Florida during my freshman year of SCAD. And it was like, I tried to go back down, you know, I had a place to live down there and she wanted me to be there. I was like, you know, whatever, go down there. Florida's not for me.
Yeah.
I mean, certain parts of Florida I do like, but where she was, especially at that time, it was retirement village.
Okay.
You know, everybody that, you know, I'd go to like, you know, I'll try and go find customers at the barber shop or the bar. You know, the places you would go to try to find people who want to get tattoos. They're all senior citizens. I'm not.
Oh, taking blood thinners.
They're not getting tattoos, you know. So,
yeah.
And as I'm down there hanging out, you know, like staying with her, I forget how long I tried living down there. It was short. But I'd be calling home back to Jersey, and my friends would be like, "When are you coming home, man? So-and-so wants to get tattooed. I want to get a tattoo.
Okay.
We're going to go get tattooed by Perfetto. We're going to do this." You know, and I'm just kind of like, I'm going back to New Jersey. I got people waiting to get tattoos, and that's what I did.
You came out here, and then you opened up your own shop?
Yeah, well, at first I started tattooing out of my friend's house.
Okay.
I did that for, I think, a winter, like the fall through the winter. Then I got a job painting houses. And then me and the guy, I taught the guy, well, I say taught with the limited knowledge I have. I taught the guy, the painter, the house painter, to tattoo. We opened a shop together.
Okay.
Yeah, that was, I think, in 91. And a Sling Ink tattoo in Point Pleasant. It's still there.
Okay.
It's owned by Brody Longo, you know.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, it's still there. I think it's the longest shop on the shore. You know?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, this is going to sound odd to maybe some people that don't know the politics of this, but did you get any shit for opening up that shop?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I did and I didn't. Not like, people didn't come there and like, I didn't get physically threatened at that point in time. You know, I got a visit from Gene Bernardo.
Of course.
And it was a very friendly visit. It was him and his son, who was like 4 at the time. And it was like, okay, you know, it's like whatever. And then I found out, I ended up working for Gene 4 or 5 years later. Right. He said, "Remember that time I came to visit you?" And I'm like, yeah. He's like, "I was casing the joint out. We were going to firebomb you." And
that's kind of why I was asking.
Yeah. and also through that point in time, when I worked for Gene, I found out too that the house where I was learning to tattoo, I had one of his biker friends, I'll just leave it at that level, describe my house to me.
Oh. Okay.
Like where, you know, this and that, like, and like, not just like, oh, you lived in a brown house with this. He's like, oh, there was this there and this kind of car and this and that. And I was like, dude, how do you know that? He's like, we didn't know which door to go in.
Right.
You know, he was like.
So, you know, this day and age, nobody really has to put up with most people don't have to put up with that anymore.
Right. No.
Those times are kind of over. I'm sure there's still some areas where you got to deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of newer people probably don't even fully understand the potential of that back then.
Right. And I never really fully agreed with that philosophy. I do think there's a level of respect, you know, to like, you know, I don't think that people have like, you know, like get approval to open up on somebody or in the area. But like, go over there and talk to somebody. And that's like, you know, you start off on a better, you know, on a better foot. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's not like, you know, I've had guys that want to get jobs with me and I say, you know, I give them a no, and then all of a sudden I find out they're opened, you know, and it's like, Well, you came looking for a job. Why couldn't you come say hi? You know, like, and again, it's not like, oh, I want you, you know, I have to give you my approval. It's just, you know,
It's just common courtesy.
gentleman handshake. You know,
Right.
like, hey, man, like, we're neighbors now. Cool. Good to know.
I don't think that scenario benefited anybody, but it's still part of the history that a lot of people in this day and age just never will see, thank God.
They
But
might.
they'll never
you
understand.
never know, man. I gotta say, like, the way things are now, like, things are a little lean. You know, the tattoo business is a little slower. I was seeing, you're starting to see things where people are a little more edgy. I hope it doesn't get, you know, I don't want to say it's going to get to the level like it was or whatever. And that was, I do think that was a very limited mentality and a limited thing, or not, you know, like when I was in Point Pleasant for a while, we had 3 shops in walking distance, you know, even literally like blocks, you know, and
So
it was Ernie Carafa, Tattoo City.
Right.
When I worked for Gene at Body Art World.
Right.
And then the Sling and Ink around the corner. We were all like within, you know, and it was like, it was probably better. Because if I was, you know, being a customer, I'd be like, I'm going to go to Point Pleasant. There's 3 options. You know, and it was just.
One of them was busy. You get like
yeah, or it's just like price, whether somebody wanted to play, you know, somebody wanted to play pricing, or, you know, look at places like San Diego. Like when, you know, when they, or Honolulu, where it's like there's Coney Island back in the 50s, you know, like there was shops on top of shops, and nobody like hated each other. It was just, you know.
You're right. Coney Island, the Pike. There were definitely places. I think it was later on where it was certain guys trying to control certain towns.
Yeah.
You know
and that's
what I mean?
how I would, like, the guy who taught me was very much like that. You know, he was like, you know, I mean, Savannah was his town from 75 to 95.
Like you weren't coming in.
Like, you know, he would definitely try to keep people out. He would try to keep people out from 40 miles away.
Okay.
You know, it was too close, you know. Gene was very much like that, you know. There's a certain level of the people that were like that, and other people like didn't.
Yeah.
It was not an issue, you know.
So you wound up working for Gene. Now, did Gene kind of take you under his wing at that point and try to teach you some stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
Because I know that you said, you know, you had your own shop and stuff like that, but I'm sure you still had a lot to learn at that point.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had that shop for a matter of months before I was like, I'm not ready for this.
Oh,
you know
okay.
what I mean, what, you know, for one, how to run a business. Tattoos,
20-year-old
you know, I mean, there was tattoos that were way over my head that, you know, I was lucky to have people like somebody like Ronnie Dell'Aquilla, you know, Mike Perfetto, guys like that, just be like, know your limits. You know, because it's like the, you know, how Ronnie put it, the best thing you can learn how, you immediately become a better tattooer when you learn how to say no. Because like if you don't, the less bad tattoos you put out there, you immediately become a better tattooer.
I got a soft spot in my heart for Ronnie.
Oh yeah,
Love that.
that's my tattoo dad.
Yeah, he's definitely a good dude. Now you worked at Gene's, the main shop.
No, I what happened was I had my partnership, and it's me and my partner didn't. We're 2 different people. Business end that I walked away.
Okay.
And I set up a private studio in Red Bank, aka tattooing out of my house. But I didn't want to do that. So I like started going around and started talking to people. And I went and visited Gene. And he was like, if you're here looking for a job, I can't offer you anything. And I was like, I'm just more or less just visiting, you know. And then within, I gave him my phone number, and I said to him, listen, this is where I'm gonna be, this is where I am, this is what I'm doing, as long as everything is cool, you know. He's no problems. And you know, I forget how long it was, a few weeks. I got a phone call, and I can go work in the Asbury shop. Dead of winter, I went. It was, you know, me and this guy Rebel that was working there. You know, I felt bad. I'm like, I'd be sitting there like, you know, it's slow. If 2 people came in a day,
Right.
it was, you know,
You're stealing from Rebel.
I'm stealing from him. So
Yeah.
I just hit up Gene. I was like, listen, I'm just gonna, if it's cool with you, I'm gonna go back to my spot and just get through the winter with the business to get better, and then I'll come back around. And by that time, he'd opened a shop in Long Branch. It was actually gonna be his retirement shop, a little one-man place. And he was like, how would you feel about going there? So I went and ran that for, I think, a year.
Okay.
And then I talked to, you know, me and Tom, well, I really kind of was the instigation. I'm like, we had a shop in Point Pleasant. It was really good. I kind of want to live back in Point Pleasant. You know, well, I should say he wanted to open another location, and I told him about Point Pleasant.
But yeah.
And then he's like, you put anybody you want with you in there. And that's when I got Tom Yak.
Okay.
Yeah, I met Tom right around then. He was like just starting to tattoo, and Robert Ryan was my floor guy already from before that, and my roommate at that point. So I was like, that was the original staff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was Rob Ryan your first apprentice?
Well, no, my old business partner would have been technically my first.
After that, though.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so.
Okay.
trying to think.
I mean, he turned into.
We kind of helped. We helped Pat Dean. Tom and I helped Pat Dean. I can't remember if that was chronologically before. I think that might have been before.
Okay.
Robert, and then I think Robert.
I mean, he turned out to be.
Oh yeah.
Pretty amazing artist himself.
Yeah.
Right on. All right. Then you did your time with Gene.
Yeah, I worked with Gene for 12 years.
And then you decided to break away from Gene and.
Yeah, well, the shop that we were in, the lease was coming up, and it was like one of those things where the town had zoned us. Mm. So like if we lose the location, you lose your license.
Yeah.
It was just everything was up in the air. Talking to some friends, I got an offer to go down to a place called Tradewoods in Toms River.
Oh yeah.
And those guys got an offer to go work at Tattooville over here in Neptune. So it was like we had sure things, or we wait and find out the leases. So we all kind of went.
Okay.
So we did that for maybe a year and a half. And then we're like, we should be working together again. And that's when we got the concept to open Electric. I think in 2005, we decided to do it. And then it took us a year and a half to get the town to approve us in Bradley Beach.
I was going to say that was a different.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bradley Beach is just a little south.
A little south of here.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You were there in Bradley Beach for how many years?
8.
And then you came here. What year did you open up here?
2014.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, this seems like a great fit for you.
Yeah.
Asbury Park's pretty up and coming. It's beyond up and coming.
It's beyond at this point.
It was 14 years ago.
Yeah.
Asbury's a cool town, man.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm happy to be here.
And the tradition musically goes hand in hand with the tattoo thing. So for me, I think it's like a perfect fit.
Yeah.
I would say 90% of the people that listen to any type of rock music know Asbury Park.
Yeah.
A lot of it has to do with Bruce Springsteen, but the fact is that, there were a lot of Jersey bands that broke out because of Asbury Park.
Yeah, it's funny.
Bouncing Souls, stuff like that.
Totally. We'll get people to come here for Bruce Springsteen stuff, Soprano stuff, because they did a lot. They filmed a lot on the boardwalk,
Yeah. Is that balls of concrete or what?
Yeah, all the summer stage shows every year. We get a lot of people come through for that.
I know that you worked for California Jim. You also worked for Gene Bernardo. Mm-hmm. So both of those guys are pretty respected. Maybe not big names like Philadelphia Eddie or Sailor Eddie or, the Moskowitz, but held their own with their own little world.
Yeah, I guess.
What got you into the history part of it?
I think the history part of it, the kickoff to that, probably was the Ed Hardy Jerry Letters book. I mean, that made me like even want to reach, because I had a falling out with Jack in Savannah at first, and it was like when that book came out, I was just like, man, we might not see eye to eye, but that freaking guy gave me everything. And it's one of those things, and it also kind of made me like look back at like, all right, you got to look back at where you came from. That was definitely part of the kickoff for that. And then like the Hardy tattoo times and this shit like that. But I've always been into history. Like, that was my favorite thing at school. Stories, just hearing stories.
Same.
I mean, one of the people that, I only worked for him like, once in a while, going and like sitting in it, working with him, making machines and stuff, was Tony the Pirate. And hearing stories from him, like working with Blackie and like stuff like that.
Yeah.
You hear stories about Blackie, and then Mike McKay puts out that book, and you're like, oh, damn. Like, this is like a whole mind-blowing
book.
Yeah, and it's like these guys were making everything from scratch and like having 22 sheets of flash in the shop and doing 200 tattoos a day. Like just like, you know what I mean? Like this shit like that where you're like, oh man, like hearing names and wanting to know more about that person, or seeing a tattoo on a customer and wanting to know more about Sailor Eddie, or wanting to know more about Stan Dennis, stuff like that. And I've always thought that was I was always taught that too, that like old tattoos are a good learning tool. You look at an old tattoo, you can tell what you should and shouldn't do, what colors work, what colors don't, what part of a design didn't have to go in and what should, you know what I mean? Things like that. So I think always studying old tattoos as well made me want to know more about the people doing them.
So you already kind of answered one of my questions, but I want you to get a little bit more in depth with it.
Okay.
How did you get into the machine building part of it? Was that because of the little bit of tutelage from Tony the Pirate?
Well, Tony was the first person to really like, I mean, when I was apprenticing with Jack, there was one of those, he gave me 2 Supremes, Spalding Supremes, and he basically just like study these things, like to get to know these machines inside and out. And I literally had to sit there. I mean, I would look at them and study them, tension, feel everything. And then one day I walked in and there's just 2 piles of parts. No, you know what? There was 1 pile of parts.
Put it together, son.
There's 1 pile of parts of 2 machines. I had to figure, of 2 almost identical machines. I had to know which one had to go to what, make them run again. But the pirate was the first person to be like, we're going to go from the soup to nuts, make machines. Back then, when you bought machines from somebody, you had to make them run.
Yeah.
You know, they would buzz, they would work, typically. But you had to know how to make them work. So tuning, I don't really consider myself to be like a machine builder. I can like assemble a machine, but I really like to tune machines.
Okay.
You know, that's something I really like get focused, like shimming, you know, gap, spring tension, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But that was almost an act of necessity, you know. So Tony was the first person to really sit down and do that with me, and then Ernie Carafa.
Okay.
You know, Ernie and I used to make machines every week. Every Wednesday morning, we'd make 6 machines on the average, and
Now, was he cranking them out because of his supply? Was that what that was about?
It wasn't. His supply business was done. You know, I mean, he was just basically making machines.
Okay.
This was 2001-ish.
Oh, okay.
So Guideline Supply wasn't really an active business anymore. But he had a bunch of castings that he had gotten back that he had originally done for him and Paul Rogers to build. But that was just he wanted to do it. I offered to help him, and then we really enjoyed it and bonded over it. You know, I think I learned a lot from Ernie in that aspect. But yeah, like I said, it's more of an act of necessity.
Tattoo Tony always talks highly of Ernie.
Ernie was great. You know, I mean, Ernie has one of those people that like. There's stories of him sending bricks to people, and you know, he had his, you know, I want to say darker days, so to speak. But when I met him, he was still in those darker days, and once he got away from habits and so forth and so on, he made a conscious effort to like be righteous.
Okay.
You know, he was like righting wrongs and like just trying to do the best to for everybody.
Yeah, the one thing that sticks out in my mind about Ernie, other than like, you know, stuff I've been told from secondhand and whatnot, when I found out, RC told me at one point that Ernie was the reason Ed Hardy was able to put Tattoo Time together. Mm-hmm. Because
he was a publisher, yeah.
Yeah, Ernie had friends with a guy that was publishing military stuff.
Something along, I don't remember what that connection was, but yeah, if you look at the original first New Tribalism, Ernie Carafa was a publisher.
Yeah.
You know, I remember Ed Hardy told me Ernie Carafa was the guy who taught him how to actually charge for tattoos. You know, he had the supply business with Guideline, like he put together, you know, Mr. Flash with Rollo, like Rudy's first set of flashes with him, Carrie Barba. I mean, like Paul Rogers was linked in with it, you know,
yeah.
And that's where Ernie learned how to tattoo. You know, kind of going back to like when people like, you know, some people say bad things about Ernie and at certain times of his life, it was like, it harks back to that same period of time when people didn't, you know, where territory was something. Mm-hmm. You know, I already told me one time, like people would send him money for a catalog. They'd be like, if I didn't recognize the name, I'd just throw the envelope away and put the $5 in my pocket because I don't know them. They don't deserve my product.
We're just going to hand it.
You know, you don't sound, you know, be like, you know, like just, you know, me off the street sending it, you're not going to get it. You know, that's how Spalding was at one time. That's how National was. You know, they wouldn't necessarily do that, but like, it's a certain point in time that going back to like territory and business where, you know, or the nature of the business. It was probably the person that he just was like, I don't know you, I'm not paying, you know, they were a little butt sore about it. But yeah, even you heard about the Queen Mary convention. I'm sure you've probably heard about that one.
Yeah.
Like Ernie was a third partner in that too.
Well,
you figure like, I always like think of the fact like, you know, Tom's River, New Jersey, you know, the people who came through and Bob Roberts tattooed there, Mike Brown, Freddie Negretti, Malone, Kenny Everett, Bill Loika came through there, like visiting Paul, like Pete Giaquinto and Ronnie came down here, you know, like there was,
the who's who of tattooing.
Like Switchblade John, all came through here.
Right.
You know, collectors getting tattooed, you know, in Jersey, you know, like Ernie, you know, brought in Lenny Weber. You know, Lenny Weber had East Coast Tattoo, which a lot of you, if you look around here, you see a lot of his flash, you know. Yeah. And to me, Lenny became one of the best in this, you know, in this area.
Which, ironically enough, is he's not one of the more known outside of the tattoo.
And he was like linked in with like National. He would do seminars about lettering and stuff like that, you know. And it was like, you know, he was like, you know, tied in with, you know, DeVita and Tyler up in New York, you know. It was like super interesting guy, like, you know.
I actually learned a lot about him from Tattoo Tony because he put him in the museum.
Right.
Which, ironically enough, you were inducted into.
Yeah, that was funny, you know. I was like,
that's cool, man.
Yeah, no, yeah, I think it's cool. I was, you know, at first I was like, oh, I'm not dead. I'm not old and I'm not dead. Well, and also I don't think I'm not really museum quality.
So the thing is, though, yeah, but your contribution to tattooing from not only being a tattoo artist, and you know, whether you want to believe it or not, man, dude, your contribution into the history part of it, I think, is also recognizable, because you've earned the respect of a lot of older generation guys for whatever reason. And, you know, some may be personal, whatever, but, you know, there's a bunch of older guys, Perfetto, Ronnie, you know, like there's a whole slew of them. I'm not going to sit here and name them all, but those guys really respect you.
And I love that, because it's like I have so much respect for them, you know.
Right. So, which brings me to the whole, you know, were you like a kid in a candy store that when you did the sit down thing?
Yeah. I mean, it was that was like always been one of the highlights of my career. You know, I shouldn't say career, because it wasn't really a you know, my place in tattooing, whatever it be. To sit at a table with those guys, they're all my friends. Don't get me wrong, but just to be like, these guys are getting. My job was to try to keep them
talking over each other,
on topic, which. I couldn't do it. You know, it's like I let them say what they wanted to say, and then if it went too far, try to pull it back in. But it's a huge honor to sit with those guys, and I'm so glad that Rich Fie instigated it, recorded it, spent hours editing, and I'm sure, you know, because shortly after that we lost Giaquinto, and then since then Tony. To have those stories put down, it means a lot to me, you know, especially to be a part of it.
Yeah, Richie said, you know, that was like a 3-hour conversation that got trimmed down.
Yeah.
And he said that, you know, because I said to him, well, some of the stuff on there, like, not for regular people ears. And he said, a little bit maybe, but he said a majority of it was like tattooers stuff. Where it was,
there's
like,
so much stuff that, like,
needle bars and stuff like that the regular person would be like, I don't want to watch this.
Yeah, we have no interest in it.
So he was like, you know, had to chop that out. I said to him, though, I go, you know, man, you should really, I hope you have the original of that and put it up somewhere.
Yeah.
Because maybe somewhere down the line, some of the stuff that did get cut out of that is going to be useful.
Yeah, there's definitely got to be some stuff like that. And I don't know, I've never seen the entire thing, you know. Okay. So, I mean, I was there, I heard a lot, I remember a lot of it. Just to have it for the sake of, like, just for posterity, like, you know, like, you know, you see things pop up now, like, you know, I'm sure you've seen that one video of Huck doing that back piece. You know, it's just like, who'd have thought 30 years later, all of a sudden this pops up, and it's like, there's footage of Huck doing a fucking back piece.
Yeah, so,
you know?
I think that was one of the things where I'm like a sponge, man. I want to soak up as much as I can.
Yeah, I've done the same thing. I mean, like, I used to go to Richmond. My only goal was to sit and talk to Malone for hours. And that's what I would do. I mean, I would go talk to other people, but it was just like, how do you not want to do? There's certain people that, like, I can't help but talk to for a long time.
There's also, like, this, you know, I think you resonate with certain people for whatever reason. With me interviewing some people throughout this short period that I've had this channel, I wound up actually being good friends with some of the people that I wound up interviewing. I don't know if it's because I just show respect when I walk in the door, but that's just because I'm, like, old school that way. Or if it's just, hey, man, just happen to be my people. Like, you know what I mean?
Well, it's that you gravitate towards you gravitate towards certain people, and then, like, you know, like when I met you, I didn't know you from anybody, and it's like, you know, I'm not like, through watching your shit, I'm just like, this guy freaking likes it. You know, he's into it. You know what I mean? And it's like, you see that kind of stuff, and you're like, oh, but, like, you know, I remember hitting you up after the Coleman one. You know, be like, I didn't know about that. You know what I mean?
And I was floored because I was like, whoa, wait a minute.
You know, because there's things that, like, you know, and that's the thing that I think is cool about history, and I think it's important for people to also, like, you learn, there were certain stories, or I don't want to say wives' tales, but, like, you know, so-and-so did this, and this is who was responsible for it, because back in 1984, somebody said that in an interview, or told somebody else, or somebody took credit for it. And then all of a sudden now, with people unearthing their collections and pulling out letters, you know, all of a sudden it's just like, oh wait, that happened here. You know, so, like, it's like almost how, like, people, like, it's evolving. Right. Like, history's evolving, as asinine as that might sound, but it's just like, because it already happened, but we're learning more and more. Yeah, because,
like you said, collections are getting unearthed, or you know, maybe certain documentations.
Yeah. Like, I have a machine in my collection that it's a Coleman machine. You know, I got it and whatever. I think it's a cool machine to have. And somebody came through here, was asking about it, and I showed it, put it in his hands. He's like, I have a letter from Paul Rogers talking about this machine.
Dude, that would blow my mind.
You know, and it's just kind of like, so this machine I've had for 10 plus years, I learned something more about.
Wow.
And I found out that it was one of Paul's machines back in the Spalding and Rogers days in Jacksonville.
Okay.
and he gave it to Johnny Walker. You know, you're just kind of like, you're tracing the steps, you know, and it's like things that like, well, now I know that, which I didn't know, how would I have known if somebody just didn't,
Right.
we just had that happenstance where I was like, oh, you want to know about it? You're looking for J.G. Russell machines? I got one, like, you know, this and that. And then he's like, I got a letter about it, you know, like, and that's kind of happening where like, it's just cool. And you just kind of like, it opens more conversations and then thusly friendships. Like now the guy who gave me that letter, I'm friendly with him. You know what I mean? Like it's just, you know, and you just kind of learning and shared interests, you know?
It just sucks for me sometimes because people will ask me, hey, can you do an episode on so-and-so? And it's like, I would love to, man, but there's just not a lot of information. And unfortunately, you know, a lot of the older guys, nobody thought this was going to turn into what it turned into.
No.
So it's not like they documented, and I always say this too, like, God forbid the day that Ed Hardy passes, that dude is going to be one of those people that every detail of his life has been documented. There's going to be no unanswered questions about him.
Yeah.
But, you know, you go back to, like, I did the episode on the Charlie Wagner thing, and people were like, hey, man, I really want to know more about Lou the Jew Alberts. And then you try to dig for some of the information, and it's like, dude, there's just not a lot to work with.
Yeah.
Or there's not a lot of pictures or anything else to go along with it. So that kind of sucks. But I will say that Chuck Eldridge did give me some really good advice down in Norfolk last year when he did that symposium on the Norfolk tattooing.
Okay, yeah.
I actually talked to him for about a half hour after that, and he gave me some really good tips on places to dig for information. That's where I'm starting to get some of my stuff now, which is really cool too, man. You know, you've been around some of the what I consider to be legendary guys. I know I don't like being called that, but who would you say is your favorite tattoo artist of all time? Don't have to have met them, obviously.
I can't have one.
No?
No, there's too many. Like, because, like, you know, I can say, oh, I want a Coleman because of his, you know, the legendary. I'd love to see more about his tattooing, like actual tattooing, watch him to tattoo, like, you know, his. But then it's like, okay, well, he did that one style of tattoo. You know, what about somebody like Bob Shaw? You know, what about somebody like Zeke Owen? What about Mike Malone? What about Bob Roberts? What about, you know, Leo Zuleta? You know what I mean? Like, you can't have just one. I mean, if I had to really pick one, I'd probably have to say Zeke.
Okay.
You know, because Zeke took, like, he went from that, you know, more West Coast style, rooted, traditional style of tattooing.
Right.
And
open up the floodgates.
You know, like,
with the
did whatever, like, he could do it all.
Japanese.
You know, he introduced the Japanese. Like, you watch that one video of him from, like, the late 60s, early 70s, some of that Japanese work he's doing. It's like, wow, it looks like
what was
guys
that,
were doing in the 80s. You know?
Mike Houghton.
I forget the last name, but something like that.
Yeah. Matter of fact, we actually just showed a clip of that.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, that's the one. But then even the video of him in the 90s, you know, like doing top-notch clean flash tattoos on the Marines. And I think that's like that right there to me is like this dude could do any type of tattooing.
Right.
As good as he could possibly do it, innovate, and then just be like, you know what? I just want to tattoo the Marines. Flash tattoos on Marines.
He seems to be one of those guys that got like, once he got like a wild hair up his ass, he was just shifting gears.
Oh God, yeah.
Like moving a Guam.
Yeah. You know, like, you know, he came.
Quitting the Pike.
He worked with us for a couple brief periods of time, and it was like, you know, one morning I'm opening a shop with him in Jersey City, and the next minute that didn't even exist anymore. And then we're gonna like go do something completely outside of tattooing. Yeah. You know, and then I'm the biggest enemy in the world. You know, and then we're fine. You know, it's just like, you know, Tony Polito was talking about him. He went and had Italian ice when he was in Brooklyn. Thought it was the greatest thing ever, and decided that's what he was gonna do, bring Italian ice back to North Carolina. We bought a machine, and he's like, well, what are you going to do for the other flavors? You know, he's like, what do you mean the other flavors? He's like, you have to have a machine for every flavor.
He thought it was just
He's like, oh, that guy ripped me off. He screwed me. And he just left the machine and hightailed it out of here, you know, like, just like that to be gone, you know. Our phone bill went crazy because he was calling tattoo shops looking for jobs. And
wow.
But, like, you know, like I said, he did beautiful straight traditional tattooing, and then moved it right to fine line.
There's a lot of guys I asked that question to. That Zeke Owens is one of the names that comes up most of the time. I mean, I was shocked when Ronnie said that. Ronnie said Zeke, and I was like, I kind of was like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, he's, you know, obviously, you know, Pete Giaquinto was his boy. But he was like, from a tattoo perspective, he thought, you know, he said that he couldn't believe how like Zeke would move and not waste any movements.
Yeah.
It was like a perfect.
Yeah, it was a complete efficiency.
Yeah. And it reminded me when he was telling me about that, and then I went back and I watched that movie, the Mike Houghton movie, and you could see what he was talking about, right?
And I think part of it too with my thing with like Hardy is to me like the best tattooer of all time, you know. But I can't ever do that. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna ever be Zeke Owen, but I can do what I can work at a street shop and just do tattoos, like straightforward tattoos, and doing the best of my knowledge, you know. And that's kind of what I try to do every day.
What got you into collecting flash?
Well, it used to be you had to have the designs nobody else would have.
Yeah, but I get that, but you also have like some pretty.
Well, that's where it started. That's kind of how it started.
From that.
Yeah, like
I got you.
You know, like my goal now is to get as much of the old Sailor Eddie flash as I can have, like the old the pinking shear, you know, like the ones that are over here.
Yeah.
You know, the yellow. You know, this is just like, I remember going to his shop and running me and just being like, that's the coolest fucking shit I've ever seen. Just the way it was all picked together, you know, the colors went together, like it showed categories. But yeah, a lot of it just really had to do with the fact of like, I was always about having a lot of flash, you know, because I mean, Jack and Savannah had so much goddamn flash. You know, like he would trade rubbings with people, you know, he would buy all the black and white copies of, you know, Spalding and National Flash. And well, he would just pick and choose the designs off those sheets and then transfer them and paint them himself. You know, because, you know, he was always had the philosophy, like, I want it to look, when I get done with the tattoo, I want it to look like it does on the wall. You know, where if he bought like a Malone sheet, when he gets done, it's not going to look like Malone did it.
Right.
You know, like, so, and everybody wanted to have, you know, every shop had its own hand-painted flash. I always wanted to have designs. I first started getting into, like, Ernie was the first person that sold me, like, vintage sheets.
Oh, okay.
I bought some Floyd Sampson sheets, and a sheet from Burt Grimm's. It was some weird fold-out Carney sheet that was nothing special. But some of them I just didn't like the designs. Like, nobody would have wanted them tattooed, and I didn't want to tattoo them. So now I was just like, I want to get flash that I like. Getting into, like, I was buying, like, you know, started buying stuff from Malone. You know, he would sell his flash sets, and then something, you know, one of them came with an original sheet.
Oh, okay.
You know, and I was like, oh, now I can I have an original Malone now. I want to buy it. So then I buy paintings from him, you know, paintings from Hardy, you know, like, and then it was collecting, like, getting like the Coleman flash. That was somebody I knew was selling 5 sheets of it, bought it from them, you know, and then somebody else started selling them, and I just bought a whole bunch of it, you know.
Is that your pride and joy flash?
Coleman flash?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
Because it's probably one of the harder
Well,
ones.
it's, you know, getting it, you know, I don't have it all as much. I sold off some of it, but at one point I had like 30 sheets of Coleman flash, you know,
Wow.
and 25 or 26 of them came at one time. So it was just kind of like one day just opening a package of, you know, and just
Christmas.
And it was just like, I mean, I had just sat there for days. I mean, I don't know if you heard this story before, but my first son's name is Coleman.
Yeah, I knew that.
And when I took like a month off when he was born, and during that month is when that
Oh, wow.
came across, and I was like, you know, I was like, I need to buy this stuff, you know. So when it came, I was off, you know, I was home, and I'm just like sitting there, just absorbing it, starting back from page 1, just doing it over and over again, and just staring and like absorbing and just trying to learn what I could. Like, to get a little off topic we're on talking about flash, but one of the first flash sets that like I bought that I've really kind of studied and learned was one of Guy Aitchison's sets, where it was sort of like the line drawings and the color studies, the color flash, and just like, because he would sculpt his lines and do all the, you know, so it's like looking at how the lines looked and how it looked when it was finished, just kind of being like, it's like doing this. But then that's why when I saw that, I was like, it's not just like, you know, a design like this one, where it's like, it's just a thin little outline and then it's just wall-to-wall color, like a coloring book. This was more rendered. It was, you know, calligraphied lines, shading was pertinent, you know, like, not the type of tattooing that, I mean, I was trying to do stuff like that then, and if somebody wanted it now, I'd be happy to, but I've always, from that point forward, whenever I bought flash, or machines for that matter, it was a learning experience, you know, trying to see why it was colored a certain way, why, like, you know, like, some of that Coleman stuff, you could see how he colored the pencil, and it's like, you could picture him taking a 6 flat and moving it that way to get that fanning like that. Right. You know, he would have shaded like that wing in 2 minutes because of the way that how that pencil moved,
Right.
you know, and how the line weight worked. But yeah, it was a lot of it. I mean, in reality, it was just how we have
Just had to have it.
more. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I got you.
And I have obsessive personality, like like.
Yeah, but you know, for a while though, you know, shops were starting to get rid of flash because everybody was walking in with a phone. Mm-hmm. And I always enjoy still seeing flash on the wall.
Yeah, yeah.
Doesn't matter what shop I'm in.
Yeah.
When I walk in and I see flash, I'm like, oh, all right, this is cool.
Yeah,
I don't know, man. Like, to me, I don't. Maybe it's, you know, the old biker in me or whatever. But like, when I walk in and there's like ferns and like, you know, cucumber water and shit, like I'm like, is this a spa? Not that there's anything wrong with that. It just doesn't compute for me because that's not what I grew up around.
Yeah.
Like, I grew up around biker shops where, you know, you went in to get tattooed and you were like, oh shit, am I gonna get lumped?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, am I gonna walk out of here? And again, I don't think it needs to be like that.
No,
but that's just what I grew up.
But
with.
I do think, like, besides like the fact I freaking love Flash.
Yeah.
But I think there is a certain element that, like, when somebody walks in the shop, they should be a little visually bombarded.
Yeah.
A little overwhelmed.
Right.
Not to put them in a bad position, but it's just kind of like, wow.
These guys,
you know
are
what I mean?
serious.
Like, it's, and not even the fact that we're serious, but just to be like, okay, this is something new and exciting. And it's like, and then it's like, you have to pause for a minute and then you absorb. And then it's just kind of like that dragon on the wall over there starts coming into focus. And it's like, damn, that's cool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it goes from being this, you know, it's almost like going to a loud rock concert. Like it's overtaking you.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you just kind of zone out, and then there's that one note that guitar player hits or that fill the drummer hits, and it's like it brings you, you know, that's kind of like how I kind of vision, you know, like,
you got amazing flash in here, man.
you know, it's like we try to, like, you know, I try to make it a combination of, and it's like, I say it's not, it's a collaborative effort, but it's like a museum / operating tattoo shop. You know, there's pieces on the wall that, you know, I could show you around later and show you some things.
Yeah, I mean,
like,
the last time I was here, you were showing me some stuff, and you know, I was like, whoa, holy cow, man. Like, you know, it might have been like the first time I ever saw Zeke Owens flash or something, and I was just like, wow.
Yeah, I mean, there's not many shops where you got original Coleman stuff in the bathroom.
Exactly.
You know, and Jerry stuff and DeVita stuff, and you know, and I'm not saying that braggarly. I'm just saying it's just kind of like this.
It's just what you do.
This is what I always go back to. Like, I have, you know, for like when it came to tattoo machines, I tried to collect a little bit of everything at one point, and I'd buy old tattoo machines that just didn't work. You know, and one of the first machines I collected was a Paul Rogers machine, and then another one, and every time I bought, they always just ran like tops.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like my focus, you know, and there came a time when they were like really valuable, and they're still very valuable, but I'd be like, I need to put them away. You know, I can't, something's going to happen to them. I got to put them away.
Yeah,
and then I'd read his article in one of the Tattoo Times. It's like, a tattoo machine's supposed to be used for a lifetime. So it's like, okay, well, now it's coming out of the freaking safe and I'm using it again. And I kind of use that same thing with Flash.
Gotcha.
You know, there's like, it can't just be in some box somewhere. I got stuff hanging on my home, my house and stuff like that. But it's like, it's got to be in the tattoo shop.
Yeah. And we're gonna throw some pictures up so people can see the stuff behind us right now, but I have other pictures I'm going to take to make sure we pop them up on the screen. So, is there anything I didn't ask you today that you feel like I should have asked you?
I don't know.
All right, man. I appreciate it, Mike. Thank you so much.
Sure thing.
Finally got to do it.
Yeah, right.
Awesome. Thank you all for hanging out with us today. Hope you enjoyed Mike's interview. You could do Instagram, Mike Schweigert, and then also Electric Tattoo NG.
Yep.
And I'll throw it up on screen so this way you can see it, and I'll throw a link down in the details below. Appreciate you hanging out with us today. Have a good night.